The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today I have the pleasure of having longtime cannabis advocate, military veteran, author, speaker, and Emmy award-winning media personality and entrepreneur, Montel Williams, on the show today. Montel, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it, Sara. Thank you.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure of being on your show the other week, and now we get to have a further conversation. I'm excited to dig in with you. But before we do, first question I have for you is, what was your first cannabis experience?
You know, I'm getting so old now that I've almost forgotten. I think I used it the first time. Well, see, I used to be in a band years and years ago. I mean, when I was in my early teens. I mean, I was 13, 14 years old. I was singing in a band and all my bandmates were over 20, over 21. I used to play in nightclubs where I used to have to literally had to walk in through the back of the nightclub, through the kitchen, perform. Then they would kick me out during our breaks, and I'd come back on again. And what was crazy is that all my bandmates were users, and they would kick us out. I'd have to sit on the back porch of the club or the building we're at. Well, they all got in the van. They, toked up. And then finally one night I was like, dude, why y'all keep me outside? You know what I mean? You got to let me in. And they let me in, and that was my first experience, and I never looked back.
What kind of music?
Oh, back then we were a band that did covers. So it was kind of like covers of whatever was popular pop music at the time, which would be a little bit of R&B, a little bit of pop, a little bit of rock, did a little bit of everything.
That's awesome. I mean, there's so much with the overlap with music and cannabis. I know my husband is a musician. He played with the Grateful Dead for many years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I do, well, I haven't been playing in a while, but I used to play jazz for a long time. And I was definitely I would have like a little puff before I would go on stage. Not so much that I'd forget my words, but enough to loosen up,
Oh, let me tell you, I think it was, I always thought that after that first experience in a van in the back parking lot, that made me like 1 million times better than I had ever been before. And so from that point forth, I've literally been almost a daily user since then. Again, it was kind of crazy. I was 14 years old, 14 years old. And literally we were playing in some of the top nightclubs in and around Baltimore and Washington, D.C. So I literally would go on stage and, pay. I'm one of those kids who kind of, I jumped to be 6 foot tall when I was a stage night school. So I dressed and I colored my mustache in to make it look a little darker. So people thought I was, at least over 21 years old. And, I always thought it made me sing better.
I think that it does. I mean, there's something about how it kind of connects all the synapses and gets you a little bit more chill and just to be able to get in the
more
flow.
creative.
Yeah.
And more creative. I mean, let's go back in time and remember almost, all of our popular authors and some of our most popular scientists of our day all were cannabis consumers. And so, from a creativity standpoint, and from actually you were being able to tap into those other areas of your psyche and your brain, I think cannabis has done the trick for thousands of years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's amazing for flow state. I love using it for brainstorming when I'm writing. I don't use it for my meetings, but I use it for my writing for sure.
Yeah, I will tell you, I'm the same. I have used it for creativity over the entire course of my entire life. I mean, in the last 20 years, I speak all over the world, and I never speak without having consumed.
Yeah. Well, and that reflecting on everything you've done, because you have quite a body of work that you've put out into the world. You have had very successful shows. You have been an advocate. You have done so very much. There's a difference between being a lover of cannabis and somebody who actually gets in deep into the industry. And as we both know, the brave soul does that, a plant touching company. What inspired you to transition into the cannabis industry and to create your own brand? Because you have a multi-state brand.
Yeah, but let's go back for a second. I mean, let's
Okay.
go way, way, way back. I mean, I literally came out as being a cannabis user on a daily basis back in 2001.
That was huge.
Long before this became vogue, and long before this was even accepted by even some of the industry today. This is back in the day. I got diagnosed with MS, and my initial diagnosis precipitated me being given prescriptions for almost every form of opioid on the planet to battle some of my symptoms. And at one point in time, I got to the point where a doctor friend of mine, who was my lead doctor, basically told me I'm not writing you a prescription, any more prescriptions for opioids, because I was doctor shopping. You know what I mean? I had a show. I could, go to a hotel in Chicago and ask the hotel doctor to write me a script that night for 25, 50, 60, 100, various forms of opioids. And I was basically, opioid shopping around the country. Sure, I put your name out to doctors and tell them not to write you anymore because you're using way too much, and I was using way too much. And so he suggested back then, I know some people who have your same illness that have gotten some relief from using cannabis, or he didn't say cannabis, but using marijuana. And you're a smart guy, you got to check it out. You might be able to find the same kind of relief. And the second I was able to find back then, this is 2001, 2002, I was able to find some cannabis out of the Humboldt County area that was very high in CBD. Back then, don't know if you remember, and you're way too young to even know this, but back then, Humboldt County was trying to grow all the minor cannabinoids out of plants. They were trying to push the THC as high as they could, push the CBD down as low as they could. And I had a particular grower who had a couple of batches of very, very heavily laden. I think, man, they were at the 11 to 14% CBD, and said, nobody likes this shit. If you want it, you can have it. And I literally was getting pounds of CBD, cannabis, hemp, I'm sorry, keef. And I became a keef smoker back in like 2001, and stayed that way for a long time with a higher CBD, which was really helping me with my symptoms. And that's what started a lot of my advocacy work. I started, testifying in legislatures all over the country that were back then passing, medical cannabis laws. And, I became disappointed that I couldn't find products on the shelves that helped me. I was finding products on the shelves. Some of them that were okay, some of them weren't. Of course, they were products that could get you, a nice euphoria, but they weren't helping me with what I needed. And so I figured, what's that old thing? If you can't get somebody else to do it yourself. And so that's why I started literally venturing into the space. And once I started, I never looked back.
It really, your admission to using cannabis was huge because you were such a household name, and people had it was a big part of having the normalization conversation, and I remember when I found out that you had, a brand. I was surprised and so very happy, because I think that brings so much legitimacy to what we're doing. And it's not like, and this is no shade to, celebrities that do have brands and they're getting into the space, because I think that more normalization is what's needed. But you were somebody who wasn't just jumping in like, oh, I think this will be a great investment. It's, you believed in it, you were using it, you were doing your homework. These are all things that we need for good representation for what we're doing.
I started digging into the hard research of the plant back in 2003, 4, and 5, long before it was vogue. I was talking to people about minor cannabinoids, and they were looking at me like I was crazy. Talking to people about CBD before CBD was a word that was being used around, or one of the cannabinoids that was being identified. Talk about CBN, talk about CBG, talk about,
Yeah.
you know, And all along the way, you can go back and track some of my speeches back in 2006, 7, 8, where I was talking about the fact that we as an industry were doing ourselves a disservice by not doing the research ourselves. I started looking at terpenes long before terpenes became vogue.
Mm-hmm.
And only because, started to recognize that if we really looked at this as a plant-based medicine, we needed to know as much about its constituent parts as we could, and unfortunately, along the way, wasn't able to find other products in the marketplace that represented what I wanted. So we started putting together first vape carts. I had carts out in the Massachusetts area for a while. I'm looking for a new um, um, contract manufacturer there. But now I'm literally introducing a product, as a matter of fact, that launches today in Georgia, which is a product that's called a melt that will, I think, actually turn the industry in Georgia upside down because, Georgia is a state that passed the medical cannabis law that doesn't allow for smoking or vaping or even eating. They call edibles is really kind of a strange category, though they have tinctures. You have to eat a tincture. However, they look at that differently, and they look at some of the other delivery systems, like the delivery system that we have. I have a thing that's called a melt that is a lozenge, so that you put it in your mouth and it melts in your mouth. And different than some of the other edible kind of products that are out there, we have a very, very, very fast onset. Most of the time you can eat something and, you never know from batch to batch whether or not you're going to get affected in the next 20, 30, 40 minutes. My product in Georgia literally has an onset sensation within, I think, most people 4 to 5 minutes at the
Wow.
most.
Yeah, that's
And
really impactful. I mean, there are, I also hear from a lot of people that, traditional edibles just don't work because of something with their own personal liver function. Like some people will say, oh, it's because I don't have a gallbladder. I'm like, no, no, I don't have a gallbladder. And I'm very sensitive to edibles. But
right,
it's interesting what you're saying about Georgia, where they're allowing certain modes of use, but not allowing others. And we're seeing that in a lot of states, and it's a real call for more education for our regulators to know that we need to have lots of different modes of use to benefit different people who metabolize it
absolutely.
differently.
Absolutely. Everybody's metabolism today, or maybe sometimes what you ate yesterday, which still could be in your gut. And we also do recognize that, you know, when you put something in your mouth and you swallow it immediately, it's got to get processed through the liver and the kidneys before it actually you get any effect and gets into the bloodstream. When you take something in your mouth and you let the mucosal area of your mouth absorb it, then it goes almost directly into your bloodstream. So your cessation or your, the how it the sorry how it really literally activates and can activate much quicker, and so I think for everybody's individual needs we need to have delivery systems that work for every individual,
Yeah,
and the
absolutely.
only way you're going to know what works for you is through experimentation.
That's it. That's it. And we can't, it's interesting because there's a lot of old tropes about dosage and how things work for people. Like it's not like according to weight. I mean, I'm 5'3". I'm not a big woman. I have a higher tolerance. My husband, who's twice my size, I jokingly refer to as my two-hit wonder. He wasn't always like that,
Right.
but he is
Ted,
now.
I can go back in time and remember when I first launched some of my products in California. I had in California is very interesting. I have a oil that you could vape, eat, or actually, or even smoke if you wanted to. So you could literally put it on the outside of some other cannabis, and you could smoke it. You could vape it. You could eat it. Um, and there were times when I was actually introducing those products in the Bay Area. I would have sessions that I would put on at various places. And I can remember one night, literally, we were doing a dab night, and I probably took 70 dab hits. 70, not 10, not 15, 70. I was dabbing with everybody who showed up at the event. And, I remember, I'll never forget one of those occasions. I probably was 50 dabs in, and one guy stepped up to the dab bar, and I said, "Which one do you want?" Because I had my formulations of oil were in back then, three different formulations. I had a milder one, which said THC to 90% CBD. I had a 50-50, and I had a 90% THC to a 10% CBD. I like to mix the CBD with THC because I think that it helps to buffer some of the anxiety. But I'll never forget, this guy walked up and said, "No, I'll take the heavy one. I'll take the big one. I'll take the big hair." I said, "No, dude, you got to go light on this." He said, "No, man, I can do it. I can do it." And the guy took one dab hit, walked across the room, and passed out. I mean, literally hit the floor. Boom. And here I had just taken 50 hits of that same thing. So I understand what you're saying. I mean, I'm not a big guy. I top out at about 189, 90 pounds. But that was a period of time when I was, dabbing and hitting pretty hard every day. But I could not now do more than 2 dab hits if you paid me, because now my tolerance is way lower than it used to be, and I'm okay with that. I can literally, I used to be a 5-6 inhalations an hour kind of guy, and now I can do 1 in 3 hours and still be satisfied. And
Yeah.
like when I get done talking to you, I'll go out in this early in the evening, so I may do a 10 milligram edible, and which is one of my own products. I'll do that, and then that'll take care of me for the rest of the evening with maybe just 1 inhalation off of a pre-roll, and I'm good to go. Yet, 5 years ago, no, 6, 7 years ago, I could literally down 2 pre-rolls and eat 150 milligrams and still walk right out there and do an interview. So it's all about the individual and the individual state at that time.
Right. And creating that safe container for experimentation to figure out what works well for you. That's so very, very important. And when people sometimes I've had people who've been embarrassed and they say, "Oh, my tolerance is so low, Sarah." And I always tell them, you're lucky. You save a lot of money. That's great. That's
Correct.
nothing to be ashamed of.
Correct. It's not. I mean, it's not. And who knows what low is when they say my tolerance is low. I mean, if you're smoking something that's like 28, 29%, THC level, overall cannabinoid, then that's not necessarily low. I've literally been with people who have taken a half a hit off of one of my vape carts, and I was just at an event over the holidays, and my friends they all go, "But that's Montel stuff. Be careful." And it's like, what is Montel stuff? Be careful. But I'm at an event, and 5 different people took a hit off of one of my vape pens, and every single one of them had a different experience. When I came back to say, "Oh man, that's really nice. I really enjoyed it." Another person came back to me and said that I was sitting outside for the last 15 minutes trying to figure out if I could walk. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they only took 1 hit, so it's like everybody is different.
Yeah, they are, and it's just so important to take the time. I think cannabis is not only a call for critical thought, but it's also a call for being in touch with our bodies.
Absolutely.
Because how it is. It's like we're inundated with social media, everything that's going on in the world, just our lives in general, and we tend to lose that cognizance of everything we put in our body creates a reaction. So I think when we do pause and ground ourselves and really see what's going on with this, it helps us do that with everything else that we put in our bodies and we do with our bodies. Humboldt Family Farms is rooted in the legendary hills of Northern California, where cannabis isn't just grown, it's lived. As one of the top sun-grown cannabis brands in the state, Humboldt Family Farms represent a collective of multi-generational family-run farms deeply committed to sustainable practices, environmental stewardship, and the craft of cultivation. Every harvest reflects decades of knowledge and a deep respect for the land, the plant, and the people who enjoy it. Now, they're partnering with Surfer Magazine and Embark for a first-of-its-kind collaboration, the first time in Surfer's 65-year history that they've ever partnered with a cannabis brand. The drop includes Humboldt Family Farms' iconic Maui Wowie flower and Hawaiian Fanta pre-rolls. You'll find the collab exclusively at Embark locations across California, and a limited number are dropping as part of Embark's weekly Getaway Bag series, a fresh tote every Friday packed with California's best cannabis. And it sells out every time. Embark has earned its place as California's most trusted cannabis dispensary, but they're not just selling cannabis. They're creating experiences that connect people to the plant and proving that it can be a force for good. They're pioneering what normalization looks like, bringing legal sales and consumption to places no one thought possible, like the California State Fair and Cali Roots. This summer, they'll do it again at Dead & Company's 60th anniversary in Golden Gate Park, followed by their 5th year at Outside Lands, with Humboldt Family Farms right alongside them. Every Embark location gives back 1% of sales to its local community, helping fund youth drug prevention programs and logging thousands of volunteer hours across California. A collaboration like this with Surfer Magazine and Humboldt Family Farms is an extension of this mission. It proves that cannabis can exist in mainstream culture, that it belongs in iconic spaces alongside one of the most demanding sports in the world. This is what progress looks like. For more information, visit Humboldt Family Farms at HumboldtFamilyFarms.com, Embark at GoEmbark.com, and Surfer Magazine at Surfer.com.
Absolutely. There's that old thought that people think, as soon as I do some cannabis, so I'm going to get the munchies. Well, sometimes, depending on what you munch can affect how quick your body responds to what you just consumed. And we all know that we all have individual endocannabinoid systems that are different than the person next to you. And, like for you or for me, if I eat, let's say I do an edible and then, I eat a fruit that's high in myrcene, I get an entirely different effect than if I eat chicken wings or if, let's say, I eat, a steak. So I probably, most of the time, I try not to. It depends. Like this evening, I'm going to probably have my wife just brought back some really, really great barbecue from Memphis. So I'm going to have some barbecue this evening. But knowing that, I'm going to have my edible and then warm up my barbecue so that I don't start eating for at least a half hour or 35 or 40 minutes because I don't want that barbecue to shut down my, euphoric feeling or what I'm going to feel from the cannabis. There are other times where I can actually go ahead and have dinner, and right after dinner, if there's a particular type of pre-roll that I want to consume, I'll go ahead and consume that because I know that nothing I eat is going to affect the way I absorb that, and I will probably, if I'm eating, we have to understand oilier things, and everybody is different, but for me, things that have more oil in them seems to not speed up my reaction. It slows it down. And that's really almost the antithesis of other people. I have other people who've told me that if I eat something oily or something that's got oil in it, I notice that, boy, that's like a boom. I get pounded if I were to eat something with cannabis, or I smoke something with cannabis, or I vape. So it's really up to you individually to slow as you go and recognize that you can look at your own metabolism and figure out, it's just this conversation that we're having right here. I'm hoping that some of your listeners will understand that, I never thought about that way. But, you do cannabis on an every, you wake and bake. There are people who get up in the morning and they bake, immediately. Well, don't you notice sometimes that first euphoria of your day is your strongest? And then you're chasing it for the rest of the day. Why? Because the food that you consume and everything you consume after that actually is literally slowing down the absorption rate. But that's not, everybody's different.
Well, and I think that's one of the fascinating things about the science, right? I, as an educator and somebody who's worked with healthcare professionals and researchers, one of the things that I love is that we're constantly learning new things. We're constantly be proven wrong. It's like you said, we have, people a lot of times talk about how THC binds to fats, but you have a very different experience. And I wonder if that's also why and the reason that we're having some issues with cannabis policy is that politicians, regulators, they like definite facts. They don't like that nuanced space of everybody's different. Your mileage may vary. We can't tell you what the exact starting dose for somebody who's new to cannabis because we don't know how they metabolize things. But instead of looking at the fact that there's this chain of questions that you ask and this container that you give people to do their own experimentation will be successful, they want something that's like black and white, hard and fast. Let's do this.
And that's what people are claiming that that's what they want, but they're full of crap.
Yeah.
Because they will go and drink a beer and take a shot. And not every time that you drink a beer and take a shot will you have the exact same reaction.
True.
It depends on what that shot is. Did you have a shot of whiskey? Did you have a shot of vodka? Did you have a shot of bourbon? You know what I mean? Did you drink just one beer? Did you drink a 7% beer, a 6% beer, a 5% beer? It's really ignorant that we can, on one side of our face, except, you go to a party where a lot of politicians are there and all of them have a cocktail in their hand. And, some of them react differently when they have their second cocktail in their hand. And most of them react way differently when they have the third one in their hand. But they won't understand that I can react differently if I take one or two or three hits.
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
Yeah. About legalization, the founders of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus. He was mentioning when we were talking about legalization that they already have examples of how to create good policy around cannabis. They already exist, and that there should be no problem fast tracking this and going through, even though we're having them. But reflecting on the policy that we do have as examples, and I'm thinking about things like tobacco and alcohol, what do you think? Do you think that we're prepared to put this together?
Absolutely not. Now in this conversation, in any way, shape, or form. If the politicians step up and think, oh, we're going to do the right thing, we're going to reschedule this to a Schedule 3 drug, get the hell out of here. That means that you're going to put it in the hands of people who have claimed for the last 60 years that cannabis doesn't work.
Right.
So you're going to put something under the control of people who don't believe in it. And that's going to do the people who do believe in it, the people who want to use it, a lot of good, right? No, it's not. I don't think we're prepared. And I don't even think this industry has prepared itself for what's coming in the next couple of years. I constantly am saying, be careful what you ask for. They reschedule this to Schedule 3 drug. If the Fed wants to step in and shut down every dispensary in America, they could.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And how could they do so? But I bet you there's something you haven't thought about. The federal government has had a patent on all minor cannabinoids since 2002, 2001. The Fed could shut down the dispensaries, not because they say, oh, we want to just shut down dispensaries. They can come in and say, you're selling a product that we own. And that's one of the only patents that's been extended and extended and extended and extended. So, and then to put a group of people in charge of something that is now legal who have said that they didn't believe in it, that's an oxymoron that I just don't think that anybody's going to be able to understand. Because there are going to be people who are going to say, well, what we need to do is we need to research and strip out all the component parts. there's well over 265 cannabinoids. And we don't know how all those cannabinoids interact with each other to provide the euphoria that you get. And we don't know how they interact individually on individuals to provide the euphoria that they get. So it's going to be another 15 years before we even figure out whether or not the people who are, even if they're good-hearted and they really have good intent, it's going to take them 15 years to figure out what it is that you're trying to research.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer in the entourage effect and the fact that there are so many components that we have no concept of yet that we're yet to find. I mean,
Slightest clue.
Yeah, I took Marinol when I was going through chemo. My mom
Worst drug in the world.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. My mom was doing.
I'm
Oh
sorry.
no, what were you going to say?
I don't mean to keep interrupting you.
Yeah.
I think I finally threw out the Marinol that I had in my closet, in my medicine cabinet, and part of the reason why is because I got it. Let's go way back for a second. I'm going to go way back to 2009. I was headed to Israel, and actually going over to actually sit down with Raphael Mashur. And I sat down with Raphael in his laboratory in Israel. I had a long conversation with him on tape. And before I got on that plane to fly over there, I thought, I'm using cannabis all the time, and I'm not going to go without. So maybe I'll get my doctor to write me a prescription for Marinol, and then I'm covered. And I literally took one of those on the airplane, headed over to Israel, and had the worst experience I've ever had in my life with any medication whatsoever.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, I mean, I think that was one of the worst drugs ever made. Why? Because, you had science try to synthesize the entourage effect, not understanding what the entourage effect even was. And they tried to isolate, THCA and make it a form of Delta 9 that your brain might be able to receive through your, endocannabinoid. We have receptors that are CB1 and CB2,
Right.
and they try to have something that would impact the CB1 connector, and they couldn't do it. And so I think that's probably that should have been banned years ago, and it's still in the marketplace and one of the most expensive drugs you can buy.
Oh, absolutely. I used it for the same reason because I was going to visit my mom. My mother was she just retired recently, but she is a cancer researcher. She actually did the clinical trials on the chemo that I ended up taking years later. And when I was going to Dallas to see her, I didn't want to travel with cannabis back then because that was like in either 2011. So it was definitely more risky than it is now. I mean, hell, people were getting arrested for CBD at the Dallas Fort Worth airport just a few years ago. But I lost my weekend with my mom because I felt like crap. I was probably not the most pleasant person to be around. And it really showed me that like there's, especially with like the different people that I've worked with, isolates have their place. But I feel like for a full therapeutic benefit, we're looking at the entourage effect. We're looking at full spectrum.
And you also got to remember, we're synthesizing that isolate in Marinol. That's synthesized.
Right.
And as a that's not what your endocannabinoid system was meant to absorb. So therefore, I'm not necessarily sure if it even works the way they think it works. And I know what it did to my brain. I literally took one and I was like, I put those in a thing, brought them back on stage. I had them in a medicine cabinet for a long time because I always like to just keep them around just in case when I'm traveling somewhere, I can, show that to a customs guy or something to let them know that I got a legal medicine here. Then they won't look any deeper. But I decided to throw that shit out. Excuse my mouth.
No, not at all. I kept mine for curiosity for a while. And then I just tossed it because I was just like, well, I mean, I still have stuff in my file cabinet from the 215 days because I like to keep all the different modes of use for examples when I'm teaching, but probably some of them are pretty darn old.
Yeah. And you know what, but people have to understand the science behind cannabis, all mammals on this planet have an endocannabinoid system.
Right.
And they're all different. And every individual is different. So that's why we react so the way we do. And, again, if they decide to reschedule What are they going to reschedule? They're going to reschedule a certain formulation that we then all have to chase. I'm not happy with this.
I'm not either. I really think that we should be going down the route of descheduling. And, I know that we probably will never see interstate commerce just because of the way large companies look at it and they want to get their fiefdoms in different states. But I think it's really important. I think it would be something that would be very, very much a positive thing to have that. Not that having cannabis that is cultivated and products that are made in the state that you're purchasing it isn't important. I think that's important too. But especially when we look at, like, say, sun-grown cannabis, it's just like grapes. There are certain areas where you like to get, where there's the grape growing regions where they have wonderful wines. I think the same happens with cannabis. That's not to say that there aren't amazing indoor grows, but there's something really special about the synergy between sun-grown cannabis, terroir, and people getting to experience just all the different terpenes and minor cannabinoids that come forth when the plant deals with natural environmental stresses.
Absolutely. I mean, well, come on. It's been around for 5,000 years that we've known of. So it's been around for much longer than that.
Yeah.
And, if it wasn't broke, don't try to fix it. So, the fact that we, again, you look at what was going on in Humboldt County in the early 60s and mid 60s, where they were trying to grow all the minor cannabinoids out of the plant, to push the THC level as high as they could. They fucked up a lot of plants. We call ourselves, the golden triangle. No, I think we were the bullshit kind of triangle. And, if now that we're getting back to understanding that, more and more growers are starting to understand the entourage effect is most important. That's why, the products that I use, I'm growing in Georgia. They are broad spectrum, full spectrum products. And all we do is tweak them a little bit by enhancing them with a little additional terpene. So the terpene that may be there and present in the natural plant, we can extract those base terpenes and add them back, raising that particular level just enough. Beta-caryophyllene, we know what it does for you. We also know that, myrcene, what it does. So as we look at, and these are things, terpenes are in every plant on the planet. Anything that smells, it's there. And they're there for reasons. Those terpenes were developed to help protect the plant from environmental stresses and from, molds and other things. So, if we utilize those and recognize some of them have a better property in anti-inflammatory, some of them have a better property in absorption, so if we just tweak those a little bit, that can also enhance that overall effect.
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all. Absolutely. And when we're looking at the current landscape of cannabis in our country, you and I came up in the times during the medicinal use days. We're both cannabis patients.
Right.
We see now, there are some people that were using it more as a legal loophole than actually believing in the medicinal properties of the plant. And it really shows when we get into states that are going into legalization where they're like, oh, we don't talk about that anymore. There are all these issues with compliance, which, hey, you can actually educate people about using it for wellness and using compliant language. Or like when I was up in Alaska this summer, they're not allowed to talk about anything that's around medicinal effects whatsoever. And one of them even had cigarettes for sale at the dispensary, which I thought was kind of wild. But it also shows culturally like how things change from state to state. What do you think we can do to preserve the medicinal aspects, being able to share the information, support the patients, and also reach out to that grayer audience that may be curious about using it for wellness, which has been largely ignored?
Education, 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 education. That's one of the biggest disservices I think this industry has done to itself and to consumers. We stopped educating because we thought that because we can't name the name of our brand, therefore we should not try to provide information. That's bullshit. The truth of the matter is, in every single state that has passed the cannabis law, the idea of being, why do you think that Sanjay Gupta got away with doing, 3 different specials on CNN? Because when you talk about cannabis from an educational standpoint, you have the right to do that. There's nothing, as long as you're not promoting an individual brand, you can talk about it as much as you want. And that's where we need to get back to putting some of the money that's being, made from this plant back into the hands of people who can educate the consumer and let them know what they are there. It's truth. The truth is that you can buy terpenes from roses, you can buy terpenes from cucumbers, you can buy terpenes from mangoes. And there's been scientific research done on those to actually equate them to some of their um, efficacious effects. So why not educate people on the fact that humulene does XYZ, or that beta-caryophyllene does XYZ, or limonene does XYZ? There's no reason why you can't do that. And so by doing that, you then have a smarter consumer who will recognize what they want when they walk in the door. And I don't have to ask a bud tender strain that has these 3 different terpenes in it at this level or a higher level than those other ones. That's not a hard thing to do. And how do you do that? You do that by educating the masses, and it's incumbent upon the dispensaries and the individuals who have licenses to get back to that ground zero. Why do you think when you turn on the television, every 15 minutes you get an ad from a different pharma company trying to tell you what they think they do so well? Because they don't give a damn whether or not they do it well. They just want to make sure that you, the consumer, heard that cute jingle, so that when you walk in your doctor's office, you say, I heard about this drug. And of course, the doctor's got a batch of it behind, samples of it sitting right behind him. Oh yeah, you can try that. Okay. So, I mean, if we were smart about this, we would be, there should be a movie a month coming out on a big screen that you can go to a theater and see, talking about the evolution of cannabis in the world. No reason why we don't do that, but we're too busy trying to buy yachts and boats and, fast cars, rather than trying to move this industry forward the way it needs to be moved forward so that it has sustainability for the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, there are podcasts out there that give information, like your podcast, Let's Be Blunt. You have a lot of great interviews on there. My podcasts are some that are very informational, but when we look at like mainstream media, we're seeing a rise in, false reporting that's stigma filled. And quite honestly, there are very few programs that have come on mainstream, like streaming or what have you, that are even worthwhile watching. Like somebody, will ask me, "Did you see this show?" And I'm like, "I can't. It's too painful. There's
Yeah,
so much misinformation."
I don't need to sit around and watch stoner TV. I'm sorry.
Mm-mm.
That's not me. That's not what I want. I don't want to see a whole bunch of people get stoned, blowing up a big squid. That's okay. If you want that, go ahead. I'm just saying that it's at a point now where, I can't remember the name of the show that I saw that I wish I could. Oh man, I don't know why it's slipping my brain. Nicole Kidman was just in this.
Oh, is it Baby Girl?
No, not Baby Girl, but it was in the one before that. She was in with Liam Shriver. It was like this crazy thing about a girl who died at a party, a function, and I can't remember. But part of that show, when I was watching the streamer, was the fact that, and I've been saying this all along. Every time if you put on, I don't care what the streaming show is, pick your favorite one out there. The hero or the heroine walks into their apartment almost every day and pours themselves 2 to 3 fingers of some brown liquor. And we know for a fact that liquor consumption has been going down since we had the pandemic, and cannabis consumption has been going up since we had the pandemic. So why aren't there more shows that just show the truth? People come home, fire up a pre-roll, go out on their balcony, hit it a couple times, and then get done whatever they have to do for the rest of the evening. Why don't we just make it part of society? Make sure, look, 38 states and the District of Columbia have a cannabis law. So 38 states worth of people, not all of them in the state, but I'll bet you clear 50% of them are consuming some cannabis. And that's the only way that we could be selling $100 billion or $80 billion worth of cannabis a year. And the truth of the matter is, those who say that those who I believe have picked cannabis over alcohol are coming to cannabis for a medical reason, whether or not they want to admit it or not. Those in the recreational states, those who are reaching out because, oh, it makes me relax better when I get home, medical. Makes me sleep better before I go to bed, medical. Calms me down when I'm getting ready to go into something stressful, medical. So, I mean, I believe that it gravitates towards cannabis over alcohol or any other type of substance that is euphoric producing, or doing so for an underlying medical reason, even if they don't want to admit it themselves.
I agree completely. And when we've been looking at legalization, one of the things that I noticed, because I was still working in education and retail when we got into legalization, was that we were having it wasn't what people were afraid of. Oh, it's going to be crazy reefer madness, everyone getting high. It was more about people saying, hey, now I don't have to have this conversation with my doctor to get a recommendation, worry about them thinking I have drug-seeking behavior. I'm going to come in and ask you, how can I use this for sleep? How can I use this for anxiety? I have aches. Can you talk to me about topicals? And
Right.
it's really nice to have that happening, because we need more conversations around that. We need more alternatives. And when we look at, a big pharma versus, the companies in the cannabis industry, I know there are some people that probably, feel like the institutionalization of big pharma, they trust that. But more so, especially in recent years, with the way that insurance has been working and unsatisfying visits with pharmaceuticals, people aren't just using it for an alternative. They're also using it as a statement, as taking control of their own health, as a self-interested activist in many ways.
Correct. I mean, well, we do understand that, when COVID first hit, alcohol use went up and then it dropped significantly. Why? Because people realized they got tired of waking up with a heavy hangover, 20 days in. And then next thing you know, you start looking, and now all of a sudden cannabis use is going up, going through the roof. But remember, every state that had a medical cannabis law made it an essential service. Isn't that funny? So if we acknowledge that it's an essential service because it calmed people down, why can't we acknowledge that's an essential product and skip this whole rescheduling crap and just consider it essential and let people who want to gravitate in that direction go that way? The only reason why is because you got a lobby that wants to make sure that you still swig that 2 and 3 fingers full of some sort of brown liquor.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, I moved all of my classes to Zoom during the pandemic, and I had a cannabis anxiety and depression. 200 people in that class every time I offered it, and they were from all over the world. Most of them were in the States, but one of the things that they found really frustrating was, a lot of the things that we were talking about here in California, because we're really lucky to have lots of modes of use, lots of minor cannabinoids available in our products. They weren't having that where they were, and they're like, how do I find this? How do I get this? And in many ways, that's when you have that call to action. It's like, this is where you start getting involved. And I always jokingly refer to it as Stoner Civics 101. It's like, if you don't like the laws, the people who are creating them and depend on your votes for their jobs have an outdated view of who you are. Get out there, say, I'm a highly functioning member of society. I pay my taxes. I use cannabis and I vote.
Right.
Because there's just, there's just so much there. And I know for myself, like, I love to have, during the day, I use a lot of non-euphoric cannabinoids. I love THC, but sometimes I can find it a little distracting for my body during the day. So CBG is like what keeps me on track when I have my long list of things to do and write. And then at the end of the day, being able to kind of take it down and smoke a bowl or smoke a joint is my way of being able to unwind in my entry into that different time of the day where I just start. I'm trying to have like good mental hygiene where I don't think
Sure,
about
sure,
work all the time.
sure. No, absolutely. And there's no reason why you can't do that. But again, like I said, we in this industry have done ourselves a disservice by not, trying our best to educate the masses about the value and efficaciousness around cannabis. I'm gonna speak at an event, next month at Morehouse College in Georgia, an event to explain why cannabis. I mean, and the fact that the industry has stopped holding events like this. If you look at our industry, we hold more B2B events every year than we ever hold B2C events. And back in the beginning, they were all B2C events where we were bringing consumers out who, trying to educate them on the efficaciousness of it, and they've all turned into these big, huge. I think that's
Of that does a really good job with combining the two is Lenny Berry does the Ohio Health and Business Summit, and he makes it so incredibly accessible. Yes, there are people from the industry there speaking, but they also have consumers showing up and they have programming that's engaging with that. And it's not extraordinarily expensive to attend. So the barrier of entry is lower, which I really appreciate because people want to know what's going on, but they don't necessarily want to pay the high ticket costs to get into these events.
sure. It's crazy.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
in it.
some of the expenses. I'm blown away that we hold XYZ BizCon. It's like, really? I mean, I get it, but by now, if you don't know what extraction equipment you're going to buy, you shouldn't even be in the game.
Well, that's a fact. And I think that, we need to be more discerning about the events that we support. Are there good takeaways for people? Is it a good, time? Is it good for our time and money to be attending these events? Because in the past, it seemed like there was a lot more meatier information being given. And now at some of these, it just feels like they're paid infomercials.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I haven't been the one in now a while. I'm tired of them because you roll into them and there are 600 booths and everybody's selling a new mousetrap. And I mean, how about selling some information to the consumer? How about letting the consumer understand that there were breakthroughs in cancer research this last year when it comes to cannabinoids? How about letting people know that there's breakthroughs in anxiety and depression in cannabinoids right now? How about letting people know the research that's out there that, again, we have over 3,500 peer-reviewed, published documents a year hitting the marketplace, and nobody's talking about them. And it's time to really start reinvigorating the interest in the consumer, letting them know that there may be something here for you. And if you do that, the entire industry will change.
It will. And you're very involved in the Georgia market. Where do you see legalization going in Georgia?
Not for a while. I see the medical program growing, and it's going to continue to grow. But see, part of the problem is that in the southern states, they think they've solved this by allowing people to sell some of these really deleterious hemp products that have flooded the market. So you can go to 7-Eleven and pick up a hemp product that has Delta 8 or some other bullshit in it that really is doing the entire industry a disservice and giving the industry a bad name. Because there are people having really bad experiences from like Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta O, all these chemically induced, non-real, it's just like the Marinol trip. I mean, these are chemically induced, synthesized cannabinoids that I'm not necessarily sure that the endocannabinoid system really recognizes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's when I'm in state committee and I hear in public comment, people are still on there doing the whole, what about the children and youth access and things like that. And my answer to that is don't look at the cannabis industry because I'll tell you, when I used to work, in the shop, I had some very angry senior citizens that forgot their IDs that I couldn't let in. we're not selling your kids weed. But when you're looking at these hemp-based synthesized cannabinoids, those are accessible to children.
Yeah, and you're also noticing that all over the country, there are people who there are new syndromes that are coming up that doctors are trying to identify and saying, this, I can't remember what they call it, like cannabis something kind of syndrome. That's coming from these people who are buying this crap in gas stations. It's coming from these people who are buying this stuff in these bodegas. And, it's not coming from the traditional cannabis user who is getting cannabis, which is real cannabis from dispensaries or even getting it from the black market. I'm talking about this stuff that is now out in the marketplace that's causing residual harm. And, until we get that cleared up, I'm telling you, that will end up being the downfall of this industry.
I agree. I mean, whether we're looking at hemp or cannabis, I mean, it's the same damn plant. And
It's the same plant.
Yeah. And we need to create better regulation of hemp, and we need to loosen up cannabis. We need to meet in the middle. And if we could actually have hemp and cannabis talking with one another and working together, imagine the amount of power that we would have to create change if we work together.
No question.
So we look at all of this. What are you excited and hopeful about?
I wish I could say I was hopeful that we would finally hit a point where we would just accept the fact that we can just accept the fact that, yes, there is something. I mean, if we believe in, science, and which some people don't believe in, but if we believe in science, we would understand that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so for everything that's on this planet that does harm, there's something on this planet that does good. And one of those things is the cannabis sativa plant that has been here for a long time and has done good. I'm hopeful that, and this is going to sound a little crazy, but I'm hopeful that as some of these diehard old assholes die off from Congress and Senate, we will open the door to people who are willing to accept knowledge, and there'll be some changes made. But we still got this old generation that's there that still believes that, marijuana makes black people step on white men's shadows. And, there's so much racism still involved in this, and there's so much hate involved in this. Remember, during the mid-'70s under the Nixon administration, we created for-profit prisons that needed to be stocked. And so what was and grab those that had a little bit of marijuana in their pocket and throw them in jail for 20 and 30 years, though they didn't do the same thing in white communities that they did in black communities, but they did. And so now that we finally realized that we don't have to have a for-profit prison system, and recognizing that we have more people in prison in America than any other country in the world, maybe we could literally will start to understand that, what, it's okay. Cannabis is okay. So what am I happy or excited for? It's going to be another, unfortunately, it's my generation in moving cannabis forward, but there's also baby boomers who help keep the stigma there. We're getting old. We're in our last quarter. So hopefully by the time our quarter is done, there'll be major changes in America and the world when it comes to cannabis, like we're already seeing right now. I mean, remember, we had a treaty, sorry, my years are either 61, 62, that was an international treaty that, the whole world was signatory to, and that was to prohibit the distribution of hemp and cannabis. And now well over 180 nations have pulled out of that treaty. And we look around the world. You look at places like South Africa, you look at places like Chile, Brazil, Venezuela. You look all over the world, we're seeing countries recognize the viability and the efficaciousness of not just hemp or cannabis as a consumer product, but we're looking at it from the standpoint of a sustainable product. You know that, hempcrete is a fire retardant. We know that, hemp plastics are less detrimental to landfills. We know that hemp in a in the format that is made, can make, has a longer electricity storage capability than the graphite that we see in batteries. You can make graphene out of hemp and have a longer electrical storage capability in those batteries, not having to rely on lithium. We could really literally take this plant apart, use it the way we know it's capable of being used. There are probably 2,500 different usages for the hemp plant. If we went back to that, we could literally start talking about sustainability in a different way than we've ever talked about it before.
Yeah, I didn't know that about the batteries. That's amazing. And you think about if we hadn't had all this prohibition, I wonder where we'd be environmentally today.
Correct. I mean, we still have prohibition today. If we were able to research this the way we should be able to research it, like we can research anything else, there are laws that stop you from researching it. Why? Because, the William Randolph Hearst of the world, the Charles DuPonts of the world didn't want the knowledge to be known.
Right.
I bet you go way back to, even Henry Ford, and had allowed his cars to drive off of hemp oil. So this is not something that science is so new. Oh, we just discovered the viability of using it as a plastic. We knew that back 100 years ago.
Right. Yeah, and now we have to get this messaging out to everybody else, which is, I'm so grateful that you've been a big part of that. And for people who want to check out your podcast, follow you on social media, things like that. And if you're not already doing it, you should be following Montel. He has been doing this work for so long. How should they do that? Or how can
you can get me at any place that social media is available? I'm there. So, and I'll get you, after we get done, we'll get you some of the hard stats of where to go. It's montelmedia.com and other places. But yeah, any place that you can get a podcast, you can get mine. And I have two. I have not only Let's Be Blunt with Montel, but also have Free Thinking with Montel. We have some people who come on to this talk about different things we've addressed, cannabis or free thinking.
I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me as a guest on your show as well. It was just to get two chances to geek out with you is just such an incredible treat.
Oh, come on, let's geek out some more. I love chopping it up. Anytime you got some free time, I'll do you, or you can do me.
I love it. And you got to come to the Bay.
Absolutely. When I get up to the Bay Area, I'll come looking for you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Montel.
For sure. All right. Now you stay frosty. Love that family, viewers. Take care of yourself. Light up a fatty tonight, and I'll join you in the cloud.
I love it. Will do.
Okay. For sure. Take care.
Take care. And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Pion on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher, TuneIn. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.